All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go, and I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Phil, since you're standing up, would you mind leading us in that?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so welcome to meeting number 2. I will just reiterate and invite whomever, if you're planning on speaking, we are video and audio recording this meeting for the benefit of folks who cannot be here. So I would invite anybody who would care to take the dais. And you have a microphone and a chair and everything right there, and the cameras can see you a lot better. So if you would care to do that, I would invite you to do that. Please feel free. And if we need if more than 5 people want to, we can find a microphone and a chair for you too. And when we're posted, it's going to be on the city's website and on the YouTube channel, city's YouTube channel. I think we see some fresh faces. Thank you, Laura, for coming, representing Senator Nielsen and probably Assemblyman Gallagher today. Yeah, I don't think. What's that? She is today. Yes. All right. And I know Laura has about a 20-minute presentation. Is that what it was? No, it's all good. So thank you for coming. We had a request initially at our last meeting to invite the governor's office, and after some phone calls and some discussions, it was decided best at this level, at this juncture of this discussion, it's best to have representative from our local folks here, if not the local folks in general. So that's why Laura is here, and thank you again for being here representing. All right. So tonight, we have a presentation from Robin Bertagna, the finance director, and Robin will be going over the city's most recent actuary statements, dated July of 18 for the fiscal year that ended in June 30th, 2017. We're still waiting for PERS to release the final year statements for June 30th, 2018, and it should be later sometime this month. So, Robin?
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to see folks here that are interested in this very important subject for the city. Tonight, my plan is to review with you the miscellaneous actuarial report. I know some of you are very, very familiar with actuary reports. We handed them out at the last meeting. Hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at them, and possibly others of you are not nearly as familiar with them as some of the rest of you or as myself. I go through these with a fine-tooth comb every year. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. Before I lead into the actual actuary report that you have a copy up on the screen, I don't expect you to be able to read it from where you're at, but I want to hit the highlights so you kind of know from the city's perspective what I look at and what I look for when I'm reviewing those reports. I did want to briefly mention 2 other things. On Thursday, I participated in it was actually a League of California Cities webinar that was put on related to CalPERS SB 266, and they talked in detail. The presenter was Dane Hutchings, who will be our presenter at our next CalPERS workshop in September. He's kind of an expert with CalPERS. He's testified frequently in front of CalPERS, and he knows that the pension system as it stands today is very difficult for all agencies throughout California. SB 266 is currently going through the state, and they're concerned about the governor signing it. And it won't have much impact on the state itself. It'll affect local jurisdictions and local governments because we have so many unions and different bargaining groups throughout the state. And if this gets approved, it's going to be very problematic for local agencies. It essentially says that if CalPERS goes back and audits and determines that somebody's receiving benefits that they shouldn't be getting because of receiving special compensation that CalPERS later deems non-pensionable, then what happens is the local governments have to make it up out of their city general fund on a go-forward basis. The annuitant still gets their pay, and the local governments have to do it and have to make it out of their general fund, irregardless of whether or not the CalPERS contract Benefits Department has reviewed your MOU and signed off on it. They can sign off on it and then come back later and audit you and say, sorry, that's not pensionable income, but because you have a retiree who's receiving that benefit, you have to continue paying it. It's probably one of the most absurd pieces of legislation that I've ever heard of. I'm hoping that enough people respond and that it doesn't get signed into law, because if it does, it's going to be very problematic. They estimated, it came about because of a Placer County audit, and it was related to a firefighter's compensation. And they determined that the firefighter was receiving pensionable compensation in their retirement that they deemed non-pensionable, but Placer County had to make good on continuing to pay for that pension benefit. So Dane Hutchings made us all aware that even though CalPERS reviews an MOU and okays it, they can come back under audit later and say, sorry, we were wrong. You're on the hook to pay for those benefits now out of your general fund. And it allows retirees to demand either a lump sum payment or a lifetime value. Due process rights for cities are eliminated, and this will also trigger additional Governmental Accounting Standards Board reporting requirements. We have to now show our unfunded liabilities on our balance sheet for our agency to show how much we owe for pensions. We will have to try to estimate what those amounts are that we owe because of this legislation and somehow book it as a liability on our books as well. Things just keep getting more difficult. Needless to say, the League is wanting agencies to oppose this bill. There's a theme that they've seen at the League of California Cities that audits are increasing from CalPERS. CalPERS has increased their audit staffing, whereas we at the local level have difficulty getting through all the audit processes we already have. CalPERS has come out and audited us before, but it's been a long time. It's a problem with them upping their staffing because they're going to get their money one way or another, is my feeling. And if they have to come in and audit and find reasons to bill us, they will. So that was one thing I wanted to make you all aware of. Contracting agencies are not paying as much in contributions. A lot of agencies, I haven't seen Yuba City doing this where they contract out for services, but a lot of other agencies are, and CalPERS isn't getting their money in the way of contributions, and they need it because we have so many more retirees than what we once had. So they're going to get money one way or another to balance the system out. And I certainly don't advocate for this particular bill. So I wanted to bring it up tonight. I think it's very relevant to what we're discussing as it relates to CalPERS. The other item that I wanted to make you all aware, you received this if you were here at the first workshop. With the miscellaneous plan, we received an updated unfunded liability contribution for fiscal year 1920 based upon the additional discretionary payment that we made last fiscal year. And we made a payment on September 27th of $750,000. And if you actually were to take a calculator and look at the unfunded liability before and then after that payment, our unfunded liability, or what we refer to as our UAL, our unfunded actuarial liability, went down $792,342. So they credited us with the interest savings that they would have otherwise charged us on that debt as well. So what it comes down to, pay now or pay later, and if you pay later, you're going to pay more. So that's why I've encouraged the city to pay as much as we possibly can, and it's definitely a balancing act because we have a lot of budget needs that we're not able to meet either in order to provide services to citizens, but I don't like paying a huge sum of interest on a debt that is owed to the city. With that said, if there's no questions, I'll get into actually going through the actuarial report and telling you where the highlight areas are that I think you should pay particular attention to. Are there any questions before I get into that?
SB 266.
It is. That is correct.
It's on the governor's desk.
That's my understanding, yes. So the question was, what is the bill? It's SB 266, and my understanding is that, yes, it has gone to the governor, and it's being considered. Hopefully it doesn't pass, but yes, I will send out some information via email to everyone who we have their email address. They did provide us with a letter that we could use to oppose it, so I'd be happy to share that. Yes?
I've seen something in here the other day that, SB.
Oh, can you please turn on your mic? Can you turn on your microphone, please? Thank you.
It's, SB 1413. You familiar with that?
I'm not.
I've seen that it says it's, having a California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust. You heard that?
That probably has to do with what CalPERS calls their CBERT trust. They have a trust plan too that you can put money into, like what the city has is our pension stabilization trust. But frankly, they haven't done such a good job at investing and meeting their own discount rate that I've been leery of giving them more of the city's money. So the city's pension trust fund is set up through a system called PERS, Public Agency Retirement System. It's a completely separate entity from CalPERS. And then the city council has to direct me when they see fit to disperse funds to CalPERS. The funds can only be used for CalPERS, but it's under the authority of city council.
Okay.
Robin, can I give you a little bit of information?
Sure.
I just did the bill search on 266 because we did get that from information from the League of California Cities. It actually, on the 14th, it passed committee with the author's amendments, and it has been re-referred to committee on approval. So it's still at the committee, and the House and the Senate, or the legislature and Senate level, has not made the governor's desk yet.
Okay, that's
So-
good. That might be new information. Our webinar was on Tuesday. This is definitely a hot topic, though, for local governments right now. And I'll just be honest, frankly appalled that something like this that could impact us as an agency, we have no say-so in the matter. So, any other discussion or questions? With that, I'd like to get into the actual actuary report. This is the cover sheet of last year's miscellaneous actuarial report for the city. It's dated July 2018, but the values that are contained in it, everything is as of June 30th, 2017. We looked just this afternoon before this meeting to see if our other actuarial reports for June 30th, 2018 are available on CalPERS website yet. They are not. But I can tell you that the city's actuary the person who did our actuarial reports last year no longer works for CalPERS, so it's entirely possible that ours have been assigned to somebody else or that they're divvying them up, so that it may take us a little longer to get them this year. And I can only share with you what we currently have available. As soon as we get them, our finance department will crunch the numbers and share with you all the latest and greatest updates that become available. That said, in the middle of this page, it shows you okay, Terrell put up for me the summary letter that shows the change. Do we have a clicker? Can I have that, please, Terrell?
No, the clicker won't work.
The pointer?
The pointer?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. I at least want to show you what I'm looking at. It's not very bright. This was our, thank you. This was our unfunded liability, $34,117,000 and change before we made the additional discretionary payment. And then afterwards is shown in this column, $33,328,000. That's the $792,000 reduction that I was telling you all about earlier. Okay, and this is the actual first page of the city's actuary report from last fiscal year. In the middle section, it shows what our rate is. The employer normal cost is considered the amount that the city has to pay for current employees for their eventual future retirement. It doesn't it's not attributed at all to past service. That's what the unfunded liability is that we also have to pay. They now give us the unfunded liability amounts every year as a lump sum payment. They want us to pay it either monthly, 1/12 each month, or annually upfront. We've been paying it for years upfront annually so that we can take their interest rate discount. It's about 3.5%, so it's fairly significant. It's equal to about $130,000 for Yuba City for this fiscal year. So it behooves us to save that $130,000 if we can. Then they give us projected results for the following year, which are shown here, the next line down. And it shows the normal cost rate for the miscellaneous plan, for example. They're projecting for fiscal year 1920, it's 11.421%. Bless you. They're expecting it to go to 12.1% next fiscal year. They're expecting our unfunded liability payment to go from $2.8 million to $3 million. So expecting it to go up over time, which is something that we look at every year. When we update the city's long-range fiscal model, we've got a 5-year model. We plug all this data into that because first and foremost, we have to pay our PERS benefits in order to take care of our employee retirements. Thank you, Terrell. Much better. I know you can't see the numbers, but you can at least see this one is our initial payment for fiscal year 1920, and the one below it is a projection for fiscal year 2021.
Could we have that number? Would you tell us how much you anticipate having to pay?
Yeah, I did. The amount for 1920 for just the miscellaneous plan is $2,828,711.
Could we have it for all of them, please?
I handed that out in an Excel spreadsheet for all of them.
I don't think a lot of these people know of the numbers.
I'd be happy to email it out again. If people sign in at the entranceway and provide your email addresses, we'd be happy to share this data with you. So please, and we'll email it out tomorrow. And then the fiscal year 2021 is $3,039,000.
That's miscellaneous.
Let's see where I'm. Go to page 4. There we go. So this shows the same information but in more detailed format. It's our required contributions. Each actuary report, and we've got 6 or 7 of them. We handed out copies at the last meeting. I'd be happy to email those again for those of you that were not here who may want to see them. They're also available on the city's website. We have an agenda. I believe you attached them to the agenda, Terrell, for the PERS workshop meeting?
For last meeting.
For the last meeting? Okay. So if you look on the city's website, you can find them there as well. So it shows you the normal cost for the miscellaneous plan of 11.421%. So for every dollar of payroll we pay for a miscellaneous employee, we need to send CalPERS 11.4 cents for every dollar of payroll for PERSable compensation. The monthly UAL payment, the unfunded liability payment, $235,726, or the annual payment of $2,731,429, which is what we did. Then down below that, if I scroll down, can you zoom in, Tara? Perfect. Thank you, Diana. Oh, much better. Yes. Thank you, Diana. So this shows you the detailed information for normal cost as a percentage of payroll for both the employer and the employee, the total annual projected payroll for the year, which I can tell you their annual projected payrolls never lines up with the city. And I doubt that anybody looked at the information that we handed out, but there was a couple of different spreadsheets. One of the spreadsheets was based upon CalPERS data of their projected payroll. The other spreadsheet was the city's update of what we know to be the miscellaneous payroll, because we're a year ahead of CalPERS because we work in current year dollars versus they're a year behind with their actuarial reports. So that said, they projected annual payroll of 11.2 million for fiscal year 18-19 and 11.57 million for 19-20. And then they break down the normal cost, the employee contribution that they estimate that employees will be paying, what they expect the city to pay, and the unfunded liability. They know we're going to pay that because they bill us for it. And if we don't pay it, they will charge us penalties and interest on the delinquent amounts that are unpaid. Shows the total estimated contribution for the city's miscellaneous plan, $3.69 million for fiscal year 18-19, growing to an estimated $4.15 million in fiscal year 19-20, or an amount equal for both years of about 33% of payroll, working its way up to about 36% of payroll. That's why these items are such a hot topic for us throughout the state. Finance directors lose sleep over this at night, trying to figure out how we're going to pay it. This is probably the one thing professionally that I worry about. Moving on to the next page. Thank you, Terrell. This shows you what I refer to as our plan funded status. It shows the present value of projected future benefits. Actuarials come up with that number based upon how long they think we're all going to live. And they decided probably 4 or 5 years ago that we're all living longer. I think we all kind of know that for the most part. It shows the accrued liability and the market value of assets. The difference is the unfunded accrued liability. Then we look at the funded ratio, which as of June 30th, 16 was down to 67.5%, and it grew to 71.5% the following year because we had good investment returns and the market was not as volatile as it is right now. If you can scroll down, Terrell. Thank you. This down below shows you what they project our normal cost will be along with our UAL payment into the future. So it shows you what the 19-20 amounts are and then what they estimate it will be for every year for the next 5 years. So it shows we started off at 2.8 million in 19-20, growing to 3.353 million they estimate in 24-25, and growing to an amount of 37.4% of payroll. This is included in all of our actuarial reports, and this is the data that I use to put into the city's long-range financial forecast, so I know exactly how steep that trajectory is going to be for CalPERS. And I share that with city council, city staff, city unions, and anybody that's willing to listen, because it is a big concern. Pardon me? This is just miscellaneous, but we have the same data for safety, and I shared all that information at the last meeting as far as homework handouts that you could all review. It's finance's summarization of all the different actuarial reports. I just kind of wanted to walk through and show you all what I look at when I look at these actuarial reports and what our finance team is analyzing and what we're looking at. Go to page 12, please. This is something that I think will be near and dear to Mr. Trainor's heart. He requested 30 years of CalPERS investment returns. This is 20 years of investment returns and or losses. The ones that are below the line are, of course, the losses. The ones above the line are the returns. So this can give you an idea of what the 20-year history has been. We don't have the 30-year as of yet, but I know staff reached out to CalPERS and requested that. So we'll see if we can provide that at a future meeting. Page 14. Yes. Thank you. This shows you our unfunded liabilities in a little more detail. It shows the active members, transferred members, terminated members. And the reason this is important is they're showing a breakdown of what we owe as an agency for our miscellaneous employees and how many of those employees are still here that gives us an indication of who's still paying into the system as an employee and who is retired, transferred, terminated, etc., and is not paying into the system but will be creating part of the liability to be paid in the future. It's similar to what was on one of the previous slides that I showed you, but a little more detailed. Next page, please. This one is very, very detailed. They come up with a gain or loss analysis for every fiscal year of the city's activities, if you will, within the CalPERS plan. There's a lot of information here, and I'd like to focus on section 3, Terrell, if you could zoom in on that, please. Okay. I like section 3 because that's frankly the biggest number that we have no control over as an agency. So I like to look at that and see where we started the year, where we ended the year, and what changed. And one of the biggest changes in our miscellaneous plan is an asset gain of $2.8 million. So you look to see why, and the things there, the city contributed $3,669,000. Benefits and refunds paid out to retirees, $5,073,000. But we had expected investment returns of $5.675 million that helped cover those benefits. CalPERS has always said that the majority of retiree benefits come from investment earnings. Ideally, that is the case. It hasn't necessarily been the case in the lower interest rate environment that we've seen in the last 5 years or so, but ideally that is the case. So the investment earnings here did help create an asset gain for the city, which helped reduce our unfunded liabilities, which helps us because then we don't have to pay as much interest to CalPERS on the debt for the following year.
You say assets, is that what the city owns, or?
It's our share of the investment portfolio at CalPERS.
Or they keep an account?
Yes, they keep an account for every agency and for every plan. So the city has multiple plans. We only have one miscellaneous plan, but we have a bunch of safety plans. Original classic employees, fire PEPRA, police PEPRA, etc. And the PEPRA is the newer, lesser benefit employees that have been hired more recently after pension reform. So yes, they track all of it, and they know how much we have in assets, how much we owe, how much we pay them in interest, how much they're paying out to each of the retirees, etc. And they track the number of active employees, the number of retirees, etc. So they have very detailed records that are included in here, and I won't get into all the details, but I at least want you to know that they're there and available, and if you have any questions, I will certainly try to answer them. Yes?
So for a lot of the smaller plans, the safety plans, they're in pools.
Yes.
Miscellaneous. In pools, do we have an actual asset?
We have a percentage. To repeat what Mr. Dice asked, we have a separate miscellaneous plan that's standalone specifically for Yuba City, and then for safety, we have a pooled plan. And we're part of the statewide pool because at the time, we didn't have more than 50 employees. And that was it 100? Okay, thank you. I appreciate you correcting me. So 100 employees, which we have more than that now between police and fire. So we're part of the state pool. We were put in a pool for that. So it is a percentage of the entire pool that we are a part of. When I was corresponding with the city's actuary last year, I asked him if we're having to pay more and we owe more because they have raise assumptions that we haven't necessarily been giving locally. Are we paying for high Southern California wages, for example? Would we be better off if we requested that CalPERS take all of our safety and put it into its own plan and not be part of a pool with other agencies? And the actuary told me that there was no law that would allow us to do that in the CalPERS Retirement Law Handbook. They've got a handbook that's pretty thick that has all the CalPERS laws in it, that there was no mechanism for that, but if the city was interested in it, that he could certainly advocate on our behalf and try to help accomplish that. But the downside of that is if we're part of a standalone agency and not part of a pool, if we had significant disability retirements, for example, people retiring out earlier than expected, then we would have very bad experience with CalPERS, and our unfunded liabilities would go up and nobody else would share in them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't know that it would be beneficial, and they couldn't tell me whether it would be beneficial. They didn't know either, and there was no law that would allow for it presently. So yes, we are still pooled for safety. It is, and I'm not sure we still have 4 actives any longer. That was a year ago. Okay. There may have been others, I'm not sure. Lynn, our accountant, probably knows that better than anybody because she does the citywide salary and benefit estimates. Okay. Okay, page 16. I know you can't see this from the audience, but CalPERS actually will track every change that affects our plan and give us that as part of our actuarial report that shows what's either adding to our unfunded liability or taking away from it, and then what we owe for an unfunded liability payment and what's causing that. So you can see the biggest thing here. I have to take off my glasses so I can see it. 797,000, and that's part of the gain or loss from 2013. So very, very significant. Our payment for that, Charles reminded me, I have the pointer here, $797,960. Just for fiscal year 1920, 2.8 million total payment, and of that, that's due to CalPERS investment losses. Ouch. Okay, moving on to page 18. And please stop me along the way if you have questions.
May I stop you at this point?
Yes.
I picked up all this paperwork last time we were here, and I can say I was thoroughly inundated, trying to anticipate what PERS were saying and what the city was saying. What I would like you to do, or what I would like to see happen, is it's wonderful to go through all these numbers, and even listening to you tonight, I don't understand them really. But could you tell us how the management, the city managers' departments, put out this white page, told us all the things that could happen, and what they should do? What are you going to do about what is your answer on the unfunded liability? Because what the public aren't aware of, the unfunded liability is the biggest source of profit for CalPERS, correct?
I'm not going to agree with that statement, no.
Oh, well, it seems that the unfunded liability, I'm sorry. The unfunded liability is paying 7.5%. CalPERS is making 6.1%. It's not too hard to figure out which you would put your money into if you needed a return on your investment, correct?
I will agree with you that CalPERS has problems and issues. There needs to be more pension reform. That's not something that I can do. I've definitely advocated with my peers throughout the state. Everyone, I think at this point, no one's sticking their head in the sand, but you have to, through the collective bargaining process, unions have to get on board, and everyone has to agree that it's a serious problem before change will happen.
Well, I don't want anybody to think that I'm in here to harbor at you, period. I think you've done a hell of a job. I don't see any way out. I don't think anybody in here can see any way out. I met with the county at their budget meeting where they were going to explain their expenses. They've got the same numbers as you have, same percentages, the same 20-year period of investment losses and gains. There is the thing that I have a problem with is that the public aren't aware of what's happening, and the public don't appear to care what's happening. And I would hope that the only reason I came tonight was I was hoping to see Gallagher and Nielsen here, but they didn't come. The only hope we have is that maybe through the local papers like the Appeal, that maybe they could start writing articles telling people what is happening and what can happen, because it was explained to me last week that if this continues, we will eventually see a deterioration in these cities, because as we see in this city, our roads have gone to hell. There's some of those roads really, I drive down and I drive on the other side of the road. And that has all happened because we're paying for an unfunded liability. My thoughts is that I think the city has paid in every year the percentage they were supposed to pay in. Would I be reasonably close on that?
We absolutely have. If not, CalPERS would be knocking on our door.
And so what happened was CalPERS, in their way of doing business, lost your money. And they're coming back now and saying, we lost your money, give us some more. I think it's wrong that the city should send in any extra money to pay down the unfunded liability, because the unfunded liability, if you paid it down in half, tomorrow morning the market could go wrong and would be up at 150% of what the liability was before. Is that correct?
And that is a concern. I agree with you in that regard, but I will disagree because, frankly, at our last meeting, you said initially don't pay CalPERS anything, and then later you said pay them more so you don't have to pay the interest.
Oh, I take that back. I wish I hadn't said that.
Yeah, we can't do both. I think Councilman Shaw wanted to say something.
Yeah, Robin and Mr. Trainer, I kind of want to pull this back in because, first of all, Phil, I hear your comments, but we're really working over the course of 6 months to try to find some solutions that are out of the norm, and we're in meeting 2, so we're not quite ready yet for solutions. And, listening to the things you talk about tonight, and we've met prior, going back to my days studying accounting, and Robin probably had this, you're in a controlled environment. It's a perfect world. Everything can balance out. And what we're dealing with is, yes, if you had a private pension, private company, and things, it's a whole different set of rules. And look at the private sectors. General Motors used to have a pension. Ford used to have a pension. All those United Auto Workers had pensions, and they morphed from those into 401ks for a couple of reasons. One of which, the biggest thing that took General Motors down, was their unfunded pensions. Okay? So I'll agree with you. It is not a long-sustaining program, but we're looking for what we can do here. And I want to take a step back because we have Laura here tonight. And Laura, thank you for being here. And if you need room to write, there's room over here. So you're welcome to join us over here. But, even though our senator and our assemblyman aren't here tonight, she has their ear. And I've worked side by side with Laura over the years. I've worked side by side with both of our elected officials long before I ever sat in the seat myself. And I can tell you what's said here tonight is going to make it back to them and is going to be well heard. And I'm hoping Laura takes the time to maybe address a few things tonight. But we're working towards December to where we've gone through, and that's part of what this is, Phil, so people can understand that hasn't spent as many hours as you have, to understand how we're coming up with all these crazy numbers, because that's really what they are. It's an unsustainable pace, and I agree with you. But we want to have a very conducive environment, a safe environment to discuss actual things and get an education level to where maybe some new solutions can rise, not just, we can't do this. We're heading for bankruptcy and we're doing, I will say it now. If that AB 266 passes, we are all messed up because there's no accountability for CalPERS, and they're the ones that signing off for things, but then when they screw up, they want to blame the municipalities. We're not dealing in a perfect environment like you would in a classroom when you're studying theory. We've got a hand that's dealt with us, and we're trying to figure out how can we work within this system and come up with some new ideas. And I want our focus to stay there instead of, we got inundated with data. There's a lot of people that hasn't been into this data that need to kind of understand what's happening, because what Robin just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, but PERS is working on 2-year-old data. They don't know what we've actually done here in the city to adjust our budget and save money and make things work, but they're billing us on inflated numbers and projections that they're taking, as we call a WAG, and say, here's the bill. You got to pay this here regardless. And then 2 years later, it kind of reconciles itself up. So, if you think of playing cards, we're playing against the house who has a stacked deck. That's really what we're doing. And we have to work for viable solutions. And I think we talked about a viable solution at the last time, which is going to be a concerted effort through Sacramento, because it's got to be dealt with at the state level. And that's why we have Laura here tonight. So I want us to stay on focus. I want us to be very respectful, because Laura took her time to be here tonight, and I know she's going to take this back. We have a representative from the Appeal Democrat here. She's going to take it and be working on that just like she did the last time. So I just want us all to agree. Let's look forward, not backwards. And let's hold our conclusions until we get through assimilating all this data, because it is quite extensive, and we all need to grow and learn in this together. Does everyone agree? Let's grow and learn together. That's what I'd like to do. Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
The question, well, that's why we wanted Nielsen and Gallagher to be here, because they're the only ones that can really fix this problem. Because it started in Assembly with AB 400. Giving the CHP a 50% retroactive raise, and then all the cities just gobbled on, and now we're in this situation. They got to get us out of it. I got a League of California Cities, the same as the managers. They investigated, they looked at it, and they come up with the same thing that has to come from the legislature. There isn't much we can do here. You just got to pay the bill.
And you do have the representative that you need here tonight, because I'm just going to be very candid with you, because I've been around politics for 30 years. And I don't mean this in disrespect to either of your bosses, but politicians come and go. What stays constant is the staff. And they work with multiples in those relationships. And they go to people like Laura that come to these on their behalf and say, okay, what happened? What was the thoughts? And this lady right here has a direct ear to both of those, to give direct feedback. And I'm sure if they could have been here, they would have, because I know both of these gentlemen very well. So please, no disrespect. We did ask, but they sent someone.
I mean, you can show the numbers as long as the people that are part of the problem were supposed to be here tonight. I just want them to hear what they need to do.
I suggest we continue to go forward, because we want to hear what Laura has prepared for us. We don't want to delay.
If I can just say one thing, and then I'll be quiet. The 2003, 2004, when this all happened, if you go back to that point, immediately as soon as we changed the rules from 2 to 2.7, your unfunded liability jumped 3 times. 3 times in 1 year. And Dave, don't take me wrong, I'm not here to gripe at people. But I've been looking, who am I to have forecasted in 2004 that this would happen? And I did it in 2005, 2006, all the way through. And it's just common sense. Yeah. And, the market, the problem is we're hooked in with an outfit like CalPERS. You can't get off from under them. It seems like CalPERS tell you what to do. We are paying CalPERS.
Okay,
They're
Mr.
an
Trainer,
employee of, excuse me.
I'd like to get back to this, please. Are you
Okay.
almost completed?
Yeah, I'm finished now. Thank you.
Okay,
I don't think.
thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want people to be able to understand what all the information is that's included in our actuarial reports, in case you find it of value. While we were talking and discussing this, I did make a list of 5 different things that we have done to try to manage our CalPERS debts and manage our expenses. 1, we prepay our unfunded liability annually. That saves us over $100,000 to $135,000 per year. So it's taxpayer dollars saved every year by the city. Additionally, past negotiation contracts with our unions, we've included one-time compensation money that is not PERSable, and we have specifically set it up that way with the unions in order to manage our CalPERS liabilities and not create stacking where we're paying more to CalPERS year after year by giving ongoing raises. CalPERS builds in a COLA of 2.75% that they assume we are going to give our employees every year. The city hasn't been doing that. And that's part of the reason that our unfunded liability went down from one actuary year to the next, because we didn't give the raises that they assumed we were going to. We also provide non-PERSable compensation where we can, such as putting deferred comp aside for our employees for their retirement instead of pensionable income. And then the one-time money is helpful because it's not PERSable if you set it up correctly, because otherwise CalPERS will come back and make you pay on it as well. Additionally, the additional discretionary payments, that avoids interest. Whether you agree or disagree with those, they do avoid future interest costs. And with that, I'd like to get back into the actual actuary report and tell you what some additional items are that are included. I believe I've got 4 more sticky tags, so I am winding down. I know this is not the most exciting topic. The schedule you have here in front of you, I look at this as the city's home mortgage on our pensions. We have a 30-year amortization schedule, and it shows what we would, the balance of our unfunded liability would be over a 30-year period, decreasing each year based upon the payments we're making, or over 15 years if we pay more. Just like your home mortgage, if you pay more and you have a 15-year mortgage, it's going to cost you, but then you're going to pay less interest over time because you pay it off quicker, excuse me. And then a 10-year amortization schedule, which frankly we can't afford. We can't even afford the 15-year amortization schedule. It's too rich for us. There's just no way we could do it. We looked at this and analyzed the data and looked at what it would cost. That was part of what I handed out at the last meeting as well, just so that you all could see what are the differences between the 30-year, the 15-year, and the 10-year. Moving to page 19, Terrell. Yes?
The new policy is 20 years, though.
It is for new layers of the amortization schedule. It's not 20 years retroactively. Mr. Dice asked about this CalPERS policy that it's now a 20-year amortization. He is correct, but it's on a go-forward basis. So if we have investment gains or losses for the next actuarial year, they will amortize those over 20 years versus all the other gains and losses that were on a previous page that I showed you. Those are amortized over 30 years. That's not going to change. Once they set that ball in motion, they don't retroactively, thankfully, change it on us because we wouldn't be able to afford to do it. We'd be looking at significant service reductions.
Robin,
Yes.
question for you in relation to our amortization schedule. We've had the discussions with their imputed rate of returns, and they've talked about moving that rate up or down. What does an adjustment up or down mean to that amortization schedule so that everyone can understand? Not in numbers, but I mean just realistically, if they moved, because we're running on 7% still, correct?
Yes.
And they were talking about moving it to 7.5 maybe at one point. And what did that do to our numbers and our amortization schedule? If I remember correct, it just drove it out the roof to where it was.
Yeah, it's when they lower the discount
Right.
rate, it drives the numbers up because we have to pay more because they're assuming we're going to have less investment returns, and the investment returns help pay for the benefits. So if they're earning less, then we as an agency have to pay more. So that's what you're thinking of. And there's a section in here that shows, they call it a sensitivity analysis, how sensitive we are in our contributions. And let me finish going through this, and I'm not sure if I flagged that or not, because I know I've already flagged a ton of numbers. I'm a numbers people, most people are not. So if not, I will find that and let you know what page to look at for that as well. So this shows you a reconciliation of how they came up with our change in our unfunded liability for the year. what the normal cost was, the changes that resulted as a percentage instead of a dollar amount. So I like seeing this because it shows the percentage change in normal cost, which is what the city owes today for benefits being provided and services being rendered by city staff that are currently still here, versus the unfunded liability where city staff is no longer employed by the agency, but we owe money for that individual still towards their retirement. So that is a key piece of information, in my opinion, as well, that you should take a look at. Page 25, please, Terrell. Perfect. Go up just a little bit. This is our hypothetical termination liability for exiting CalPERS. What this says is that, and they calculate it based upon two different actuarial rates of return. Because if you pull out of CalPERS, they're going to invest the city's assets in less riskier investments. So they run two scenarios here. A 1.75% rate of return and a 3% rate of return. They don't know what it's going to be because they don't know what the market would be potentially if an agency were to pull out. So they will lock in that rate based upon the 10-year Treasury bill if and when an agency decides to exit CalPERS. So they give you an estimate. It could be 126 million or it could be 187 million. So that said, if we were to terminate and we were to receive a 3% investment return as CalPERS estimate, our unfunded liability to exit the system would be $102 million. This is what I was referring to at the last meeting, and I said the most significant asset we have is the new 5th Street Bridge. CalPERS doesn't want it. They won't take it. If we decided to exit CalPERS, we would have to come up with that money. We don't have that kind of money. It's not available. So, yes. No, this is just miscellaneous. I put together a summary and included it in the handouts that I gave out at the very first meeting that had the total, and I don't recall, but it was like 850 million, or it was a significant number. Yeah. And then my last tagged page is page C3, Terrell. Yeah, it is. Way back, it's almost to the very end. I can't tell you exactly. It's about 5 back from the end. Go up, please. Keep going. C3, C1. Keep going up. Yeah, it's C1. I want everybody to see this as well. There you go. Up, please. Perfect. This shows for the miscellaneous plan kind of statistical data, if you will. It shows the number of active employees change from June 30th of 16 from 165 to 167 in June 30th of 17, so on and so forth. The reason this is important is you can see the detailed statistics as to how many active employees we have versus how many transferred or terminated members we have, and then retirees is down below here. Shows as of June 30th, 2016, we had 235 retirees on the miscellaneous plan, and June 30th of 17, we had 241. That's important because if you look at the number of active employees for June 30th, 2017, it was 167 versus 241 retirees. What that means is we have far more retirees that are getting paid benefits out of the plan than what we have participants currently in the plan that the city is paying in for as active employees, and the employees are still paying a share towards their retirement as well. And this is what CalPERS is seeing throughout the state. And it's a problem because they didn't necessarily plan for the day where they would have far more retirees than they did active employees. Hence the increasing contributions as well. Are there questions? That is the conclusion of my overview of the actuarial report.
What are we paying CalPERS? What do we pay them for the backup?
They charge that as an administrative fee. They don't tell us how much they're charging. I'm sure that it's part of the net investment returns. They take it out of the investment returns before they tell us what the returns are.
From what I gather, looked to me like it was somewhere between 3/4 to 1%.
You're right. It's about 1%. Of money unless you have a. So it adds up.
Are there any other questions? Let me look real quick to see if I can find the sensitivity analysis. Thank you. So if Terrell can take us to page 23. And then just go up a little. This shows the sensitivity as to what a change in the discount rate would do. You can see that if they lowered the discount rate to 6%, the normal cost would go to 25% or 25 cents on the dollar for every PERSable dollar of payroll we pay employees. And that's in addition to the employee share, which is 8% for miscellaneous or 7% for miscellaneous PEPRA employees. The accrued liability would go up, the unfunded liability would also go up, and our funded status ratio, or the amount of money we currently have in the plan versus what CalPERS says we owe, would decrease to 61.7%, which is very close to the point of no return. That would be a huge problem. That would be a very deep hole for the city to dig out of. It would be very concerning. So that's probably one of my least favorite pages of this actuarial report. But again, important information, I think, for everyone to be aware of. And at some point, it's highly likely that CalPERS will reduce the discount rate again. So it will impact services for sure when that happens. Any other questions?
Page 24, can you comment on the volatility?
These are numerical calculations where they compare the market value of asset receivables on page 24 of our actuarial report for the volatility ratios. They come up with an asset volatility ratio and a liability volatility ratio, which is a measure of how much volatility there is in the market based upon the receivables for that the city owes for our unfunded liabilities, etc. So that's a numerical indicator of how volatile things are. And I was just to say, for everybody watching the stock market lately, it's been highly volatile. So thankfully, this isn't happening between, say, June 25th and July 5th.
So for the miscellaneous plan, this is pretty,
Yes.
yeah, for the safety first.
Any other questions? Any discussion?
Yeah.
I'll say one more thing. I think, in my opinion, I think we're wasting our time. I can't, it appears that I would like somebody out there to say, this might be a way out.
A way
Anything.
out?
Just come up and say, well, go up to Reno and put our money on the black and shoot the whole thing. Maybe that's a way out. But there has to be some way out other than bankruptcy. And, you know, I don't like to be griping about bankruptcy all the time, but every city and every county in the state admit it. And I think, you know, we should maybe admit it, because one of the things this council has done, they've been willing to listen to the people. And there hasn't been any other since 2003. the council and the board of supervisors have shut people out. You, on the council, haven't had the benefits that they've had out of at the board, because the board have got a good, reasonable payment, monthly payment, and they get a good pension. You people show up and you spend your time. But you have opened the door to where the people can say something, and maybe something will happen. But we should sit back and say, you know, that PERS, you have gotten us into this. It isn't Yuba City that got into us. They got us into this problem because you, the city, have paid the amount of money PERS have asked for every year. And sometimes you paid more. And all of a sudden, PERS comes up and says, oh, that wasn't enough. That's an unfunded liability. We have made a mistake. Now give us 7% over and above what we should have gotten because we made the mistake. I would tell them where to go. You can't, but I can. Thank you.
We can try.
Because this whole thing, when they set it up, putting it back to the date you were employed is what made it broke. Retroactive. Retroactive, and it was horrible. I don't like being on record. But we really need to look at more. She does a great job. I respect her, respected her for years. We need more than just the individual workers at the city. We need to look at how we can organize people throughout this state to clean up that mess. I get a pension, but you know, I looked up what my grade was when I was forced into retirement because of disability. And you know what? I'd make almost twice the money now. This is wrong. All of the government employees are getting the huge pay, but the guys out here living in the neighborhood don't. And the old government employees didn't get that pay. So we've got to look at how we can clean this up for areas. San Francisco cannot even hire employees with the money they have. They can't afford to live there. And yet we look at the same rates around this area? No, it's wrong. Sorry. And I don't like this.
Actually,
Elaine, we're writing down suggestions, and I think in your commentary there you had one or two. Could you summarize so we can, maybe Terrell can capture that? Or did you
actually,
catch
before
what
we
she
go
got?
there, I got what, and that's what I was going to ask. Terrell, you were working it and putting it on the screen last meeting, and we have the notes and all the questions, because I don't want us to keep going back through and coming up with the same ideas meeting after meeting. The way we built this to try to structure it over the course of the 6 meetings was to build upon all of the ideas that came out, so that when we get to December, we can kind of throw them all against the wall, see what sticks and what we come out of. But you said, you know, we got to work together. And one of the things we had was deal with Sacramento to make changes. Okay, so that was exactly what you were saying. So if we could get that list back up, it would be good to help us understand, you know, what ideas have come up so far, so that if we have any new ones, we build upon those. Because again, we're looking at throwing everything, the ideas together, and at the end of the 6 months, see what really works with all the knowledge that we've amassed during this time. So I think that was the biggest gist you were talking about, was work with Sacramento and not work independently. So, and there she is. She's got them kind of going up there. And then I wanted to go back to an earlier comment to the gentleman here in the second row that he just looked like, oh God, he's talking to me. Did you have all of your questions answered? Because I appreciate you speaking up, because we are wanting to look forward. Did Robin answer all the questions that you had tonight, or do you have some more that you would like answered? Because I'd like to withhold any questions until I Okay. Okay, perfect. So if we could somehow blow those questions up there to where, or the comments to where we could really see them, because I can't see them from here. Oh, you guys have that as well. Okay, perfect. Well, you see the ideas that came up last time, which is, require the employees to understand CalPERS costs. And I actually think they do. The unions know that this is a burden on the city. What changes can be made. There was different things that came up there. So is there anything new that we want to add to this? Sorry for taking the mic away from you, Mr. Mayor, but I think that's kind of where we were going, was seeing if there's anything new so that we don't have the same ideas coming up.
I think Elaine was mentioning to rally not just local, but get groups regionally, if not more than regionally, to go to Sacramento and tell PERS that we're not happy. Even you used the word sue them, right? If we can add that, Daryl, consider suing PERS.
Cities and counties and any other PERS members already yelling at PERS?
Yes. And PERS is yelling at themselves. I think some of the assumption is that they're just sitting up there doing business as usual, not doing anything. Believe me, they're doing their best that they can within the rules that they have, and I think that's one of our suggestions, is to change their rules, right? And that's going to be in the letter I'm going to send us down there too. But that's one thing. We can wallow around in the past and be upset about how we got here, which is fine. That's part of the reason why we're here, is to get people to vent and inform people, and hopefully get some suggestions, some outside the box solutions, because otherwise we just wade through a cesspool of bureaucracy, and it's ridiculous. And so we want to definitely avoid that. But it's a lot of work to get through it. It's pea soup basically, and there's a lot. You have one idea. There's always seems to be a regulation that you can't do it. Or I was looking down here. Some folks came to me and said, "Hey, just go to a defined contribution versus defined benefit," and then I go through the paperwork here, and just to cash out of that, $490 million, and that was in 2017. Just to walk out. So that's not doable.
And
Yeah. Agreed.
They've definitely stacked the deck against us.
Yeah.
And I've been invited to attend CalPERS board meetings from the League of California Cities to speak out about certain things, such as the affordability factor for reducing the discount rate. I agree it has to be reduced if the level that they have it set out is not attainable, but yet the trajectory for our contributions are just escalating out of control. That said, I did go down and I got my 3 minutes and they cut me off mid-sentence. And they're very, our council lets people speak, I think, in comparison to CalPERS. When you're from a small agency such as Yuba City, and there's a board of, I don't even know how many members they have, but it's a huge board, and you're standing up there and you can tell they're not even listening to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And it's a horrible feeling. So I don't know how you get their attention. I don't know if it takes a lawsuit. It takes something much greater than a handful of finance directors and city managers down there trying to speak to them and being ignored.
But I think
Would-
if we get other city and county groups together, where they know that we're all fighting, we can decide who's elected and who's not. There is an election this year.
so with that, just scratching the latter half of that, but going backwards, it kind of gets into deal with Sacramento. And it was an idea, and I didn't see it on here, we talked about last time, maybe look at forming a coalition to petition Sacramento would be another idea. Because again, we are a small agency, but it's going to take, if there's a coalition, just like they've had for other bills that go through that petition, that might get some traction. So
Would the city consider putting up, say, 25,000 and then getting in touch with other cities and counties and saying, we put up this amount of money, will you put up some money? You're not going to get anywhere unless you put up some money, correct? I mean, That's the law of politics.
Can we use your credit card?
Yeah, cover it next month.
Oh, okay.
No,
You've been in contact with Sonoma County, right?
you know, I could give you the name of probably 10 different people that really understand this. And I would think that we're not going to get anywhere. We can gripe all we want, but until such time we put our money up, you're not going to win anything. That's right. And hire a good law firm.
Well, I would say, Mr. Trainer, I also have a very good understanding of that, but it's just enough to be intimidating because I can't change it. Me, myself, I can't have an impact. I think Leanne has a question or a comment.
Good evening. I'm Leanne Link, and I'm Robin's counterpart at County of Sutter right now. I'm an extra help employee, but in there, and I have a little bit of experience with this. And one of the things that I think the legislators can help with is that the PERS board is mostly political appointees, and they make investment decisions based on a political rather than what is the most lucrative for PERS. And so they shy away from investments or will not make investments in certain groups of investments, such as tobacco or alcohol or firearms, and where they could get a better rate of return because that's not politically palatable for those. And so I think that that's where we can actually put some pressure on the state. It's not that it reduces the liability for what will be paid out, but it increases the investment return, which in turn benefits the cities and the counties.
Now, is that they cannot invest in those things, or they will not?
They've chosen not to.
Okay, so that's easier to fix then. Well, that's just politics talking. There's not a rule against it, correct? So we.
When they were given the ability to invest in equities or in real estate, in REITs, they had tremendous investment returns, and that's when we were super funded, and that's when we ended up with, because we were super funded, entities didn't have to pay the employer share, so they bargained better benefits, and I mean, it's this whole sequence of things that have happened. But if we started with, one piece that we can control, which is how they make their investments, that's where I think cities and counties can actually have a voice.
That's a great idea. And that sounds familiar to something that may have already been up there, correct? Okay, I thought so. Very good idea.
A lot of times, PERS has really tried to focus on the investments, but what's really killing us is the liabilities, and they've gone up incrementally. The investments go up and down. The liabilities just keep going up in a relentless trajectory. So to focus on liabilities, I think is it's not the smartest thing to do. The liabilities are what's really killing us.
Laura, would you like to speak?
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go over here. I don't like figuring out whose back is with me. And first off, I want to thank you, Mayor Harris and Councilmember Shaw. I do appreciate getting the opportunity tonight to come here. And if you'll just bear with me a moment, I'm going to try to send you away with an understanding of why I'm here and what I can and can't do. There's actually no can'ts in my world, but it's about what I can do and what I do here. And first and foremost, I am a resident of Yuba City. I am a 26-year resident of the community. I know many of you. I love what I do, and I am the senior district representative for Senator Nielsen. I also work very directly with Assemblyman Gallagher's office. My job is to be here and to hear you. The senator represents 937,000 people, and his intent, it's extremely important to him. Any of you who know him, he is a listener and he is a thinker, and he's a doer. And so when I'm out in the community, his expectation of me is that I hear you and I think about what you're saying, and if I have ideas, I can put them forth. We all know that pensions and pension liability is an extremely, in some ways it's so simple. It reminds me of water. It can be incredibly simple when you think about it and what the issue is, but again, it gets incredibly complicated to go those steps. So the only thing I can assure you is that I came to this meeting, it's only your second meeting. You're doing exactly what you need to do. You're looking at your steps, you're looking at your ideas, you're getting people weighing in. As I see that begin to be something that I can work with and I can assist you, I can assure you that I will. And I appreciate Councilman Shaw's comments. I can assure you, if the senator needs to hear it, he's going to hear it. And if you come up with something in December, Mayor Harris, the rest of you, I will do my absolute level best. I will guarantee you that the senator will hear from me about what I've heard from you and about anything. We've already worked with the city on many levels. And, you know, it's sometimes the most frustrating part probably, it takes time. It takes time, but everyone's, as I have to give you credit, by having these meetings and this series of meetings, by December, you may have something very real that out of this second meeting and your first meeting, and I will, if I'm still invited, come back, and I will continue to listen, and I will do my level-headed best to make sure that what you're saying gets heard, and I can communicate with both offices, so. On that note, if anyone has a question, I guess, but that's about all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you, ma'am. Did you have a question? You were reaching forward.
I would like to thank everybody for coming again tonight, and all the information that we handed out at the first meeting is available on the city's website. If you didn't receive copies of the actuarial reports and finances summaries of the unfunded liabilities, the contributions, and all the different scenarios, that's all been made available on the city's website, www.yubacity.net. Terrell, which part of the website should they look at? Perfect. She's got, as part of tonight's presentation, a section that shows you where to go find it. Okay. So I'm always available as well to answer questions. If you have any questions, you can call the finance number for utility billing, and they'll patch you through to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. As both the mayor and Councilman Shaw have said tonight, we are looking for solutions. We are acknowledging that, yes, absolutely, this is a problem, not just for Yuba City, but throughout the state. So your ideas are welcome. We're trying to look forward and find solutions. So appreciate suggestions and ideas. Thank you.
You had something, Phil?
Thing I'm going to say is that between the county and the city, and that's 100,000 people, our unfunded liability is $250 million. $250 million in Sutter County.
Thank you, Phil.
Money you don't have. Thank you.
Thank you. Who, may I ask who's here? Is anybody here for the first time? Did not come to the first meeting? Right here? Okay, that's what I thought. Well, welcome. Hopefully we can see you again. And hopefully you've had your questions and the information so far. That everything is on the website. So I'd encourage you to go through that. Anybody, if you have, we don't have to wait until our next meeting. If you have any, if you're laying in bed in the middle of the night and something hits you, please pick up a phone or send me or Dave or anybody at the city an email, and we'll add it to the list. So we're literally just writing down everything, no matter what it sounds like, any ideas right now. Then we'll go through them all together and consolidate that as we move forward in December. So with that, thank you very much, you all, for coming. Did you have something you'd like to say?
I just wanted to reiterate again how this whole process is working, because Phil, I heard you loud and clear earlier, and I didn't want to cut anyone off, but it is a 6-month journey. We want to be looking forward, and during these 6 meetings, if you have an idea, we want to log it in, and we want to see what sticks when we get to December, because we're trying to come out with viable solutions. So if something hits you as an idea, speak up so that we can get it jotted down so we don't forget about it over the course of 6 months. If you have any questions, bring them up, because this is a journey that we're all on. And I understand PERS quite well, but not near as well as these 2 ladies do. 3 ladies, there you are. I saw Lynn sitting over there. But it is very complicated. There's no such thing as, a too simple of a suggestion or too complex. If you got an idea, let's throw it on that wall over there and let's see if it sticks come December, because that's what we're driving for. That's the reason we've got a 6-month process to educate, learn, and come up with new ideas. So I just want to thank you all for being here myself. Thank you.
I also want to thank Brian Hansen, the man behind the curtain, running the AV stuff. And, of course, Robin and Tara, our city manager, Diana Langley, Ben Moody sitting back there, everyone giving up their evening to be here with us tonight. And thank all of you as well, Laura. So our next meeting, and hopefully we'll see everybody there, and then even some extras, is September 19th, 6 p.m. right here. So thank you all very much.